conducted pursuant to the provisions of the Brown Act to facilitate teleconferencing and to reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmission at public meetings. Ordinarily, the Brown Act sets strict rules for teleconferencing. AB 361 suspends some of those rules during a state of emergency where state or local health officials have recommended social distancing. The Brown Act continues to require that we notice meetings in advance and allow the public to participate. The Community Advisory Committee has met all of the applicable noticing requirements, and the public is welcome to participate in this meeting. If you wish to be recognized during public comment, please fill out a public comment speaker form found at ebce.org/meetings and use the raised hand feature in Zoom. You will be recognized for 3 minutes. Comments can also be submitted online at ebce.org/meetings. And with that, we'll take a roll call.
Thank you. This is the East Bay Community Energy Community Advisory Committee meeting Monday, November 14th. It is 6:05 p.m. Can we please do a roll call and confirm quorum?
Great, thank you. Member Landry.
Present.
Member Hugh.
Present.
Member Liu.
Present.
Member Swaminathan. Member Lakshman.
I'm here.
Member Taria. Member Pacheco.
Present.
Member Susan. Member Susan.
I'm here. The space bar isn't working. Sorry.
Great, thank you. Member Hernandez.
Present.
Member Letts.
I'm here.
Vice Chair Mutzenberg. Chair Elwood.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We will be doing this meeting in a slightly different order tonight because of staff obligations and availability. But as always, we will start with public comment. I do want to remind everyone that public comment is reserved for persons wishing to address the committee on any EBCE related matter that is not otherwise on this meeting agenda. Public comments on matters listed on this agenda shall be heard at the time the matter is called. As with all public comments, members of the public who wish to address the committee are customarily limited to 3 minutes per speaker and must complete an electronic speaker slip. Do we have any comments that were submitted in writing previous to 5 p.m. yesterday, or have you received any speaker slips, or are there any members of the public with their hands raised?
We have 3 members of the public with their hands raised. We'll recognize Jessica Tovar for 3 minutes.
Hello, Jessica Tovar with the East Bay Clean Power Alliance. I wanted to just flag to folks, if you have not heard, the CPUC has issued its proposed decision on net energy metering. And it looks really grim for the future of local solar in our communities, specifically they would be slashing the amount of money that people could make on their excess solar that they produce at a local level by 75%. This is essentially a local solar energy killer in the state of California. And my understanding is they will potentially be voting on this issue December 15th. We just found out about this information end of last week. And it is a very contentious issue. But one thing I want to highlight is if we lose our policies that incentivize local solar, we will lose the production of local solar. And on top of that, I do see it as attacking our communities because we're really fighting for clean energy resilience at a local level and to be able to keep the power on in the face of power shutoffs, unforeseen catastrophes, climate crises, etc. So this is something that we really should be paying attention to and advocating to fight for. And in addition, East Bay Clean Power Alliance would like to again ask for more information in regards to the job metrics, which were requested before. And, you know, it's really important to us that we really emphasize the success of these programs and jobs created. And we want to be able to see where this is at. And that's the whole point of this work that we do, is to create more clean energy jobs and resilience for the community. And so it's really important that we get that information. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. Member Valle, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Oh, no, I just wanted to let you know that I'm present for the meeting. That's all. I don't know how to get into the meeting.
My apologies. I will record you as present. And
Thank you.
Take Tom Kelly, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. Just wanted to remind everyone that the UN framework on climate change is taking place in Egypt right now, and everything I'm reading it describes it as a complete disaster. It's full of fossil fuel companies trying to greenwash their programs to apparently make it look as if they're actually doing something about climate change. But, you know, what can you do? That's on sort of the international level. Here at home, though, we still have a CCA, East Bay Community Energy, that's delivering some of the dirtiest power in Northern California. So what are we doing about it? I'm asking the question because I still don't have an answer to it. I think, you know, that it sort of falls on the CAC to try and make the case with the board and staff to clean up the EBCE power supply in Bright. We're adding Stockton, second largest city in the EBCE, and they're all going to be Bright Choice customers. Just adding to the greenhouse gas emissions that are being emitted into the atmosphere that are destroying the planet. So I ask you, what are we going to do about that? I think that's it for now. And I thank you for taking the time to listen to my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no further public comment.
Thank you, Jessica and Tom. We do appreciate that very much. So we are going to, again, go a little bit out of order on this, as there are some conflicts. Some of our staff are reporting tonight at, I think, 3 or 4 separate board meetings, and so we are grateful that they are here. And so our first agenda item today, before we do minutes or the chair report or anything else, is going to be the local programs update. This is an informational item, and I believe that JP Ross will be presenting.
That's correct. Thank you, Chair Eldred. I appreciate your flexibility tonight. I am presenting at a couple city council meetings. I thought I was going to have to drive to Livermore and be there in person after this, but it's actually remote. So I have a little more time, but still appreciate your flexibility in moving this agenda item up. And yeah, I was going to give an update. This is going to the board on Wednesday. On some of the activities that we have recently put underway or will soon have underway with respect to the budget that the board approved this fiscal year. If we can go to the next slide, Adrian. So as many of you are aware, we're allocated a $22.5 million budget this year. and I wanted to give an update on how we are implementing some programs to use that budget. This is not an extensive update of everything that we are doing, but an update on some recent requests for proposal, requests for offers that we have issued and are underway. And so I'll talk about 4 programs: our energy efficiency and grid services program, our EBCE Ride electric e-bike program, a zero emissions goods movement electrification loan that we issued a call for projects on, as well as an upcoming municipal electrification loan program that is still being developed, but will be offered to our cities pretty soon. So if we go to the next slide. So our energy efficiency program. So we've been working on this for a while, provided several updates to the CAC and board about our pursuit of state funds through the California Public Utilities Commission to run an EBCE energy efficiency program. So we got approval from the California Public Utilities Commission in August on a $13.5 million 3-year energy efficiency program. And last month, we issued a request for proposals to energy efficiency implementers to pursue pay for performance incentivized energy efficiency projects on commercial buildings. And so we are going to be evaluating proposals that come back in from that request for proposals. Is about $11 million in the incentive budget for implementers and incentives. And we'll be paying those incentives based on meter-based savings from those energy efficiency improvements rather than deemed savings, which is traditionally how energy efficiency programs pay out. So we'll be only paying out after a year's worth of metering on participating buildings, and then we'll compare that to non-participants to really understand what the energy efficiency program has delivered. And then we're also incentivizing higher amounts for bill reductions during high peak hours, which are high cost and high carbon hours. So that's the publicly funded part of the program. We also issued a grid services call for proposals within the same RFP. This is not funded by PUC dollars. It's funded by EBCE operating revenues. And this is kind of for additional savings that we can get during the morning and afternoon peak hours. So when we actually look at our procurement costs, we have a morning peak and an afternoon peak. This is completely related to the solar duck curve. We've got a lot of kind of cheap, clean electricity in the middle of the day, but we're starting to see peaks in the morning and afternoon before that solar really comes online. And so we've said, look, we'll pay kind of our avoided electricity costs plus some buffer for savings that we can meter and measure during these morning and afternoon periods. And then, implementers can kind of propose how they might stack those with other available programs that allow for stacking to deliver those savings. So, we could have one implementer do both of these programs for us, or 2 implementers, do one doing energy efficiency and one doing grid services. So we'll see what comes back in the proposals that we are going to be receiving in December. So that's our energy efficiency program. Been a long time coming. Really happy with getting this RFO out to market, and interested to see what comes back. Next slide, please. So we're also excited to announce our Ride electric e-bike program. So as you all know, we're doing a lot on passenger vehicle electrification and medium and heavy duty. The next thing I'll talk about is about medium and heavy duty electrification. But this request for proposals came out in October. The board had provided $2 million in this fiscal year for micromobility And we looked at that and we were like, we really think we need to invest kind of in a bigger, longer term program. So we're proposing that we take the $2 million that was allocated from this year and then also plan to allocate $2 million in the next 2 fiscal years, 2024 and 2025, for a 3-year, $6 million micromobility program focused on e-bikes. And there's other funding available potentially through county, regional, state, federal programs around e-bikes. There's a lot of activity on e-bikes. So we're also looking at how we might leverage those, but even just our $6 million spend is a pretty significant spend in this space. And then we're breaking the program up into kind of 2 programs. One will be an e-bike incentive program to provide incentives for residents and customers of the EBCE to purchase electric bikes. And 40% of the incentive dollars will be dedicated to income qualified customers on our care rate. So that's the e-bike incentives, and the incentive numbers and those types of things will come back to us from the proposers. So really we've just earmarked the amount and then they'll come back to us with the program shape. And then the second part of the program is the e-bike lending program. So we only have so much money we can kind of like give to people in the form of incentives. And so we also wanted to put some funds into a program that we see as a little bit more catalytic, in the fact that like people can borrow an electric bike for a period of time, say 2 to 4 weeks. The time is still to be determined, again, by the proposals. And people will be able to kind of check out an e-bike, use it for a period of time, understand how they can incorporate an electric bike into their daily routine, picking up groceries, getting to work, dropping their kids off, whatever it is that people need transit for, and then return that bike and someone else can borrow it. And then, the goal of that is to really help people understand how e-bikes can be incorporated into their lives, and even beyond the end of, say, our incentive program, which will run out of funds at some point in time. And can continue to spur kind of interest and awareness and evangelism of electric bikes above and beyond our ability to put funds into an incentive program. So both of those things will be tied and kind of coordinated with each other. But yeah, very excited to get this out into the space and see how we can help incentivize and accelerate other modes of clean, safe, healthy transportation beyond just passenger vehicles. Next slide, please. So our zero emission medium and heavy duty project loan. So this is a type of program that we've started using. You may recall we used it in our Block Power low moderate income electrification program. We provided some low cost debt to Block Power. We have decided to use the same vehicle, excuse the pun, in this program, which is to offer a 10-year $5 million, 3 million, 5% loan for zero emission, medium and heavy duty goods movement projects that can be sited in EBCE territory that are providing electrification of medium and heavy duty vehicles that are in EBCE territory. This is a pretty new space. And so some of the developers in this space can have challenges kind of getting equity, getting project development capital at reasonable rates because it is an immature market. And so providing some accessible, lower cost financing for projects to be sited in territory, we felt was like a good use of the budget that the board had authorized for this year. And so we want these projects to be rather quick and come online by July of 2024. From our work in this EV space, we know that project planning and PG&E service delivery and getting sites can take a while. So we're giving projects almost 2 years to come into delivery and operation. But even that's kind of a quick timeline for some projects of this scale. We're talking multiple megawatts of chargers for large, medium, and heavy duty vehicles. And similar to Block Power, all the work here is required to be prevailing wage as per the terms of our loan agreement. And so we're looking at different ways that EBCE can use capital, to help incentivize and deliver on our local development, local programs objectives. Really have got some proposals in for this that are really interesting and looking to select a project or projects that we can invest in and provide some debt for early in the first quarter next year. Next slide, please. So along the same lines as the last, we also want to help our cities electrify their buildings by creating some easily accessible financing for electrification projects. So similar to the last program, but this is for municipal buildings and electrifying those buildings. As we worked with our cities through the REACH codes and the municipal electrification program, like finding the financing to support electrification can sometimes be a challenge. Obviously, cities can go and raise capital, raise low-cost debt through bonds and other measures, but that takes a while and can be cumbersome. And so providing some more easily accessible, smaller bite-sized funding for projects that electrify is something that we think it will be of interest. And we've talked with cities and they're quite interested in exploring how we could provide this money and then potentially recover the funds over time through a bill, through the electric bill is another thing we're trying to build some capability for. And we have a near-term opportunity here that the city of Piedmont is trying to electrify their municipal pool. And we did provide some kind of technical assistance through our technical assistance program here. And electrifying big projects is actually quite technically challenging. Not a lot of these types of projects have happened, huge heat pumps for, say, pools and such. And so that's something that we would like to pursue with the city of Piedmont, and as well as talking with our other cities to determine how we can structure this financing program to help them achieve their objectives and electrify their buildings. So our goal here is to progress this project with Piedmont, as well as structure the financing program over the next couple of months. Probably come back to the board next month in December for an action item, if we can get there with Piedmont to approve that fund. And then, this is something that our cities really use and find helpful for electrification projects, then we would put more money in it. Many of the municipal programs that we're running, and we want to make sure that they're available to all of our cities. And sometimes that means making sure there's enough budget, as we've done in our fleet electrification projects and our resilience projects and other projects that we're doing with cities. And so we wouldn't want the $2 million funding that we received from the budget this year to be a limiter. But that's going to be dependent on the kind of the customer interest and how many projects we can find. So we'll structure this program, and then we'll issue kind of a call for projects, and cities submit projects for financing through this financing program. So those are the 4 programs. The next slide is a bit of an update, kind of a timeline on where we see these different projects. We've issued RFPs for the 3 that I described, the first 3 programs in October. There's different development timelines for shortlisting and negotiating with counterparties, and then coming back to the board to request approval. And then we plan to launch our energy efficiency and grid services program in March of 23, the e-bike program by July of 23, the zero and medium and heavy duty project should be delivery, COD by July of 24, and we'll work with our selected vendor, whomever that may be, to try to move that forward. And then the municipal electrification loan program will be a little bit more open-ended as we develop that offer and then issue a call for projects. But we do plan to progress this Piedmont project in the near term because they have something that they want to do shortly. So we want to make that happen and again, facilitate quick action with our cities and anybody who's participating in our programs to achieve these deliveries. So that's the update I wanted to provide on these recent activities. There's certainly more coming forward. This is not an extensive list, but a list of some of the new programs that we budgeted for this year. I would also note we have a couple of staff positions on the local development team that we're currently hiring for. So one is a micromobility and passenger EV adoption staff person who will take on this e-bike program and other passenger EV adoption programs that we got some funding for. And then I also am going to be hiring for a reporting analyst who will be working with me and the team on a local development programs and reporting and metrics, as well as helping with our community grants we budgeted for this year. And so hoping to bring both those staff on, by the end of the year, if not the very beginning of the next year, so that we can continue to broaden the work that we're doing and report out on it. So that's the update.
Mute issues. That was a fantastic update. Thank you so much. I am going to go first to public comment on this item before returning to the advisory committee. Adrian, I see that we have a couple members of the public with their hand raised, but was any written correspondence received on this item prior to 5 p.m. yesterday?
We've received no written public comment for this item. We have 2 members of the public with their hands raised.
Great. Then if we can go for it. They can have their 3 minutes each.
Thank you. Tom Kelly, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Adrian. So the primary reasons for the formation of EVCE was to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And as I look at the lineup at the meeting, I know Ernie was there when we discussed that, and I'm sure he could confirm that that was one of the driving reasons behind its formation. So this electrification is good, in my view. But what happens when you switch from, say, PG&E electricity to EVCE electricity? You actually increase greenhouse gas emissions. What happens when you switch from gasoline or diesel to electricity? Do you actually save any greenhouse gases by electrification? I don't know what those gasoline and diesel and everything, what their emissions intensity is, but I would actually ask you, JP, to provide us with a comparison of what it means when you say, put in charging stations or electrification for trucks. And what kind of emissions are we actually looking at here? Because frankly, if we're not saving greenhouse gas emissions, then there's a big shortcoming in this particular program. And I noticed in your presentation, you don't talk about GHGs, you talk about electrification. But from my perspective, the savings on GHGs has to be a component of that, or basically it's not worth it. I mean, why would you switch from PG&E power, which is 6 times cleaner than EVCE power, Bright Choice? I mean, why would you do that? I mean, I'm just kind of, I don't know what to say. And I think that with the GHG reductions has to be a component in these comparisons so that the CAC and the board and the public can actually see whether or not these electrification programs are actually providing any benefit to the planet and to the people of Alameda County. Thank you.
All right, before we go to the next one, I'm just And I see, Alex, that your hand went up. Tom, I do want to encourage you to look at the research documents that are attached to the local development business plan, and the efforts and prior reports that staff have made when the decision was made to pursue medium and heavy vehicle electrification. It was specifically looking at greenhouse gas emissions and the relative impact that each dollar investment could make versus electrification of vehicles versus electrification of medium and heavy vehicles in our communities. Additionally, there was also something looking at not just carbon emissions, but subsequent other types of pollutants that affect public health outcomes in the community, and it's really well researched and documented. So those documents do exist, and there was about a year or a year and a half of discussion on the strategies that resulted in staff pursuing this particular strategy as part of a greater portfolio to address GHG emissions. It's a really important thing, but I do want you to know that it's there, and because you are one of the people who really does do research, I just want to let you know that that is a resource that is available to you. Alex, did you want to add anything to that?
Thank you, Chair Eldred. Yeah, I did just want to put some things in context here, and particularly the question about comparisons to PG&E's power supply, and just remind folks here, both committee members and members of the public, that roughly a little less than half of PG&E's power supply on its standard option is nuclear power. So anytime you're making a comparison, folks should factor that in, depending on how they feel about nuclear power and it being considered a carbon-free resource. And actually, if you compare the power supply, the non-nuclear carbon-free power supply of EBCE's Bright Choice option and PG&E, EBCE comes out ahead on that. And then just the last thing that I'll say is that despite how official it is, the power content label does not tell the whole story, for better or worse. So a great example of this, in fact, I think it's analogous almost to nutrition labels on food. For those who are alive during the 80s and 90s, you might recall that fat-free was all the rage, and basically it was like you look at a nutrition label, and if it had 0 grams of fat, then it was healthy. That we know now, thankfully, that that's not really the case. That just because it's fat-free doesn't mean it's necessarily healthy. And just because it has some fat in it doesn't mean it's necessarily unhealthy. And it depends what you're comparing it to. And so just one great example of this, I used to work at MCE. I spent about 7 years there, very proud of the program MCE has. And I know MCE gets brought up a lot as an example of good programs and good power supply, which they certainly deserve to be. There was a service option that was created called the local SOL option, SOL, S-O-L for sun in Spanish. And that option was 100% sourced from a local solar project that I think was about 2 megawatts at the time. And so for customers that wanted to purchase their energy that was sourced from a local 100% renewable, 100% solar project, that was their option. And it was about 30% at the time. It was about 30% more expensive than the others options. But I bring that up because even in that case, where that 100% solar option, which had a emissions factor of 0, for those customers that chose it, the lights still were on, shining brightly when the sun was down. So how is that possible? Because during the times when that solar facility wasn't producing solar power, those customers were still on the grid receiving grid power. And what was grid power? Largely at night, especially when hydroelectricity is low due to the drought, at night, the power for those customers was also largely natural gas, depending on how much wind was blowing. So, and I'm not trying to disparage that option. It's a great option. Like I said, I'm very proud of it for the time that for the relationship I had to it. But I just want to point out that even when a power content label says 0% emissions, that doesn't mean that all of the fossil fuel on the grid has magically disappeared for those customers. And the reverse is true too. Just because a certain energy option has a higher emissions factor in any given year, it doesn't tell the whole story. So I just wanted to provide that context for those and make sure that everyone's getting complete and accurate information on that topic. Thank you, Chair Eldred.
We really do appreciate it. And Tom, if you have any questions about the difference between the power content label and what is actually getting put out, I would be happy to run through some of that stuff with you. I realize I've been a little bit busy this month, but I am happy to go over some of those things with you. So we are still in public comment. And Audrey, you've got 3 minutes.
Thank you. It's Audrey Achinose, East Bay Clean Power Alliance. It was great to hear JP's report on the number of projects that are, getting underway. I wanted to raise one question, though, about the Municipal Electrification Financing Program. And that is that, it seems to me that if you make it the competition for loans open, that cities like Piedmont will, be in the forefront, not just because they are richer on the whole, but because they, can afford to be more forward-looking in terms of reducing harmful emissions. So my question is, how can EBCE what can EBCE do to equalize the access to these kinds of loans, this loan in particular, for municipalities that are not so well endowed, maybe are less able to take advantage of these loans? I'm sure that a lot can be done in many other municipalities, but they are just not in a position to, work up these projects. So maybe EBC can come up with some ideas of maybe, this sounds like in the sky, but maybe a community like Piedmont can maybe partner with another city and hopefully together they can get 2 projects done with the support of Piedmont, for example. I don't know, it just seems to me really tough for some municipalities to compete. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Audrey. All right, so great. We're going to go now to clarifying questions and discussion from members of the CAC. Ernie, you raised your hand first.
Sure. And I'm not sure of the rules. Is it inappropriate for a CAC member to respond to a public comment or not? When we formed this body, and just so the staff that weren't here knows, and the members of this body who are new, when we formed this body, we went through lengthy discussions to decide how we were going to organize this. And one of the things that we found almost universally agreed upon is that we wanted a space for the public to be able to engage in more in-depth conversation with the CAC. Because one of the big frustrations that was felt is that in government, and we are a pseudo-governmental organization, by definition, we are government, is that there wasn't a meaningful way for people to engage. So while I am not, with our agenda, I'm not able to go like big, long ways down side paths, and we can't actually get into big discussions around some things. And there are some limits, like if an item isn't agendized, then we aren't really supposed to discuss it too much. But we can engage in some forms of conversation, point people to resources, do that kind of stuff. So Ernie, if you would like to respond to a public comment, you should do so. We just can't like raise a vote or have a presentation or, any of those kinds of things. But yes, absolutely engage. Okay, thank you, Chair Eldred. Well, 3 points, I think, in response to Tom Kelly's comments. And Tom, I appreciate your comments. And
I would like to say that, I mean, we were both there when we were creating this agency, fighting for its existence and creating the rules for the JPA. And one of the most contentious arguments we had, and it was contentious, went on for quite a while, was whether or not we were going to accept nuclear as part of our mix. We eventually decided that we would not, and we knew that we would take a hit on greenhouse gas emissions on that. I supported that at the time and still do. But that was one of the things that we knew coming in. We also knew that there are some other things we wanted from the agency which might not maximize our immediate greenhouse gas emission reductions, like a strong local build out program, because it's more expensive. We will be creating less power in a finite amount of time, and therefore that's also somewhat slightly taking a hit on greenhouse gas emissions. But I know that I and a lot of other people, and I think probably you as well, Tom, we wanted to create something that could be emulated. We didn't want to be like the CACs that exist in other states. And we wanted to take what MCE had done and take it to the next level. So we are not optimized for maximal quick greenhouse gas emissions, even though that is something that we need to try to do. And I will say that there is one issue though, is that a lot of the other CACs did take the nuclear mix. The one thing where I am curious of, I don't have an understanding of, is for those CACs that did choose not to take the nuclear offer from PG&E, is how their emissions are lower than us. And I'll stop there.
Okay, and that is definitely not an item on tonight's agenda. It is a good thing to know that there is ongoing interest in the topic, that interest has not died down. I can't even feign surprise on that. So thank you for your comment, Member Pacheco.
I did have a question for JP though. That was why
okay. That would be great.
Sure. So JP, as usual, usually when you come here, you're full of good news and programs I didn't even realize we were working on, or some great updates. So same as always today. A couple questions I think I already know the answers to. So you say you're already talking to some possible partners on the zero emission goods movements. I'm imagining these are all mostly for like local, whether it's medium or heavy duty. Imagine these are people that are doing local trips or small hop trips. Okay, that's what I figured, because the technology that also maximizes the reductions of local pollutants and greenhouse gas emissions. So that's great. A question about about the municipal funds. So is it only cities, or could it also be like a JPA that's composed of EBC member cities? In particular, I mean HARD, the Hayward Area Recreational Department, which is the county, and Hayward, and I think San Leandro. But I know they have facilities that they possibly could be, well, I know they would be interested in knowing whether or not they could have some funding to electrify. Are they open, or could we broach that question about HARD or other local JPAs being possible recipients of that program?
Should I respond?
Yes, please.
Okay. So our plan right now is to have this first round just for cities, just for our member agency cities. If it's something that is really useful and usable, and municipal agencies find it helpful, then I think we can look to expand it, kind of like we're doing with our resilient critical facilities work, right? Like we start that with our cities, we build a working model, and then we think about how we can expand it potentially to other public agencies, which is something that we're evaluating for kind of our resilience work going forward. But first, it's like prove it out, prove that it works, and figure out like what's the structure and how to make it work. There is other like low to zero cost electrification funding out there, right? Like PG&E has a program. I tried to look at their application yesterday. It kind of made my head explode. So like the purpose here is make it easy and useful and quick, so that folks use it. And then to answer on the medium and heavy duty, one of the criteria of submitting a project was that the vehicles are registered, domiciled, and did routes within EBCE service territory. So we kind of constrained it. We're not doing long haul to LA, just not in this, not eligible for the medium and heavy duty goods movement funds.
Cool, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Member Lutz.
Okay. Thank you, JP. That's really good stuff that EBC is doing. And I had a specific question on the additional grid services program that was for large commercial. I was wondering how, if that could be extended to residential and small business to get those extra incentives if they avoid the morning and afternoon, evening peaks.
Yes.
Especially in light of what seems to be going on at the PUC of doing away with solar and storage incentives. Could EBCE sort of step up and maybe provide as incentives only what makes sense from EBCE's point of view, so it might not be total, incentivizing the program, but incentivize them enough so that from, in terms of pennies per kilowatt hour, that it would make sense, and hopefully, and see if that would be enough to expend it up, enough of projects that with incentives that make sense for EBCE.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So the grid services program is available to other customer categories, not just commercial. The commercial program is just the PUC funded $13.5 million, $3 million program. So the answer is yes.
Okay. And are you working with, or is EBC planning to talking with like solar installers and how to tweak it so that it would make sense for the local small installers to add that into the incentives they provide their customers?
No, we're not. We have an open solicitation. So when we have an open solicitation, we're not actively in the market telling people how to bid on it. That's not a good idea.
For the same reasons that Ann Olivia just talked about in meetings. But it seems like once this closes, then it might be a good time to discuss a program that would make sense both from EBCE's point of view and from local installers' point of view.
Yeah, the purpose of putting an offer into the market with a steady and recognizable revenue stream for behavioral or technological deliveries is to see what comes back. So hopefully we get proposals back, and maybe some of those proposals have some tweaks or some recommendations of how to do it better. And so, we can see what comes back. But I think it's often better to, put out a proposal and see what comes back than it is to have, lots of conversations that can go around in circles that often don't necessarily lead anywhere. When we're putting money on the table, we'll see what comes back, and hopefully we get some good proposals that we can execute on. And if not, then we'll change it and see what a second round would look like.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, both of you, for that. That was enlightening. Member Souza?
Thank you, guys. I do have something for Tom. Just wanted to say that I really love his commitment to reduction of clean energy. I do also want to reassure him that energy efficiency is always a gain. It reduces electrical, it reduces gas costs. It's usually passive if you do it right. So I love the fact that you're doing efficiency. And I was also wanted to mention about the pay per measure. It's a year-long wait to see how much gain that would be. And I've been in rebate programs for a long, long time. And there is a reason for going to measures rather than doing pay for measure or pay for performance. But it's actually you know, it's a little complicated. You know, there's changes to the building over the year, there's changes to tenancy, there's changes in the size of the building and equipment, obviously. So it's a little hard to measure. So when you do take proposals, definitely get somebody who's experienced in measuring the reduction. There's a lot of good organizations out there that know this. You know, you can go to using the translation of, say, kilowatt hours to BTUs / therms. You know, there's a clear calculation for that. Since we are moving from gas to electric, so you're going to be looking at that, and also as you know, you're going to be changing the fuel mix, so that's where that complication comes in. And so, you know, just as long as you are aware, and I'm sure you are, but you know, when you're looking at the proposals, that definitely pay attention to the pay per measure. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we've requested an M&D proposal and recognize certainly the electrification presents a challenge, and so there needs to be, you know, a whole series of control groups set up in order to understand the impacts of those measures. But I appreciate your comments there.
Thank you for all those comments. Member Hu?
Great. Hi, everyone. Thanks again, JP. Great presentation. I just had a quick comment on the municipal electrification loan program. I think this is so exciting to hear. I really appreciate the intent and the strategy here. I think my personal questions and comments are perhaps similar to Audrey's from public comment. I'm essentially curious about how municipalities are finding out about this incredible opportunity and how they're developing proposals to EBCE. I think, you know, the reality, I'm just going to name it, is seeing a quarter of the available funds right now go to electrifying pools in Piedmont it's difficult to see when there are so many other opportunities within our territory. It sounds like from your comments that there will be some like technical gains and expertise gained from that process, and it's a near-term opportunity to leverage and demonstrate concept. Absolutely. I'm curious, therefore, for the remaining funds, you know, if EBC can commit to like targeted outreach or technical assistance, you know, really try and help municipalities get in line for the remainder of those funds, and ideally, you know, really build that pipeline that I think municipalities are really hungry for. So I'm so glad that EBC is in this space. I'm curious how other municipalities can get in that line. Thanks.
Yeah, so we're actively discussing with different municipalities about the projects that they might have, the projects they're interested in. We've been running a municipal electrification assistance program that provides technical assistance for electrification projects for the last couple of years. And frankly, we realize that's not enough. Like a lot of times you do the technical assistance and then they get the information and they're like, okay, we can't do this. It's too expensive. We don't have the money. And so like doing the technical assistance program builds a set of projects and then also helps us understand what are the limits. So, you know, that said, these projects we're not being flooded with lots of projects. They're difficult, they're complex. And so and we're also not able to just like throw cash at it and say, here's $1 million, go do it for free. So, you know, there's a balance of kind of what we can do and where we're putting our limited funds and attention. The goal here is like, let's default to action. And we have somebody who's like, we want to do a project and it's really technically difficult. And, you know, this funding would make this happen for us. And so our intent then is to say, well, if we can prove how we do this with one city and they can sign the paper and they can do the project, that's better than waiting 5-6 months to like talk to everybody and figure out how it's going to work for everybody. Like, let's default to action. And we're also talking to other cities and saying, what do you need? What are the projects that you have coming? How should we structure this to either do individual ones that make it easy or preferably create a program that works, you know, for everybody? And then, as I said, we'll do a call for projects. And, you know, my intent is certainly to make all of our programs available to every city. And We have gotten called out for like calling people to task when cities don't participate in the programs that we're offering because, you know, board members don't want to hear that their city's not participating. So we're trying to make everything as widely available as possible, including like being persistent with different cities if, you know, but we can't force everybody to do it. So that's why we have proposed that like, let's default to action. Let's try to progress this project. And we'll create an open call for projects. We'll work with our cities to try to create a pipeline and, you know, understand that, you know, allocating 25% of the existing funds feels like a lot to one project. And frankly, it feels like a lot to one project, no matter what city it is. But that's the purpose of saying, and if we have a lot of interest and we have a lot of funding requests, then we'll make more funding available. Like we can make, this is kind of a pool of funds that we can make actually quite widely available because it's not actually depleting the pool because the pool gets replenished. And so it's something that we can lean into. The first thing is like, can we get some cities across the line? Like, is this actually a difference maker? If it's not a difference maker, then building a bunch of rules around appropriations, like let's first figure out, does this actually work? And then figure out how to make it widely available.
I was muted again. Alex, your hand went up for just a second. I had some questions to put on here, but if you had something you'd like to jump in on.
Just very briefly to Member Hughes' question, just on the topic of communications with our member jurisdictions, my EBC colleague Kate Caddy and I meet on a monthly basis with staff from all of the jurisdictions that we serve. So we have a regular standing meeting with all those folks in the same room where we present to them on all sorts of things. And as you can imagine, JP and his team are like the most popular people. They're always the stars of the show. So just so you know that we do engage with our municipal partners on an individual basis, but we also on a regular basis are presenting to all of them on all the latest and greatest. So just wanted to, that's not in public view. So I just want to make sure that folks here were aware of that. Thanks.
Thank you. So I do want to jump in here for a second before you have to leave. First, it's really exciting to see the direct coordination with participating cities. I think that this really gives us the opportunity to tailor projects to the needs of that local community. I mean, it's really exciting, and I hope that more funds are put towards this. Like, this is very specifically the kind of thing that we should be funding. It's really exciting to see that what you've brought forth. When you're doing your research on this, I would be interested in seeing the difference between electrification and efforts in rental versus occupant-owned dwellings. And like, when we look at the demographics of Piedmont, it doesn't have some of the same percentages of folks who fall under the disadvantaged communities and some of those other tracks. So just interested, but you will still have some populations there. And with the work that's being done through some of the other programs, I think you're going to be able to get that data. And I'm just really looking forward to seeing the results of that, because it's a really cool, it's just really cool. And I'm glad that you're doing this. I had a question on the e-bike program that you brought up. I'm wondering if there is a budget in there for maintenance and training of people who use e-bikes on how to keep them up and do like service on their own e-bikes. And if you're also looking at lifespans, I'm on the Transportation Commission, and we look at we received a very distressing report about how long the electric scooters last. And so when you look at the exergic footprint, not just the greenhouse gas emissions, but how much energy actually goes into making a thing and then how long that thing lasts. Like, a lot of the scooters have a lifespan of less than 30 days. And that is a just disgusting use of resources. So even though they're not emitting greenhouse gas emissions necessarily, the amount that it took to create them and how long they last is like deplorable. So I'm hoping that you're looking at lifespan of things, and I'm wondering if what kind of support is available for training people to maintain them and providing maintenance to the loaner bikes and stuff.
Yeah, so those are things that we are asking for from the proposals to identify. For the loaner bikes, they will have their own maintenance program, right? Like they'll be, it's like a library. So they go out for a couple of weeks, they come back, they get serviced, and they get reissued. So that, the goal with the loaner program is to have that last for a while. Once you put the capital in it, the administrative costs are actually pretty high. But again, the point there is kind of like a catalytic effect that people become evangelists and go buy their own bikes and use them because they understand how they can incorporate them into their daily lives. So yeah, the operations and maintenance component is something we specifically are requesting. On the incentive program, how we evaluate proposals will also depend on what's the administrative process for the incentive, what goes into the incentive. How do we make sure that, people are using those bikes safely? So those will be, again, things that we'll be evaluating from the submissions as we choose implementer or implementors for these programs.
Excellent. That's really exciting. I would love to get, when you go to put that out, I would love to put it out through the transportation committees that I'm on because they're big. And they have some very, very engaged bike communities and whatnot. So it's really.
Yeah, it went out in October. I can share the solicitation docs with you. It's on our solicitations page. So it goes out to everybody that's signed up to receive our solicitation.
That would be great. I'm signed up for many of them. I don't know if I'm signed up for that one. So thank you, JP. That was really fantastic.
Sure thing.
Seeing no other hands, we'll see you next time. Thanks for taking the time to talk with us tonight. And,
thanks so much. Off to Livermore.
Off to Livermore. Take care.
Bye.
So we will go now back into our regular agenda, which the next item is the approval of minutes from October 17th, 2022. So I would be looking for a motion to approve in a second, and then any discussion.
Motion to approve, Cynthia Landry.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Kim Lutz, I'll second.
Thank you. Motion to approve by member Landry, second by member Lutz. Did we receive any public comment on this item prior to 5 p.m. yesterday, or are there any members of the public with their hands raised?
There's no public comment for this item.
All right, thank you. Seeing no discussion from the committee, can we please have a roll call vote?
Before we do that, I do have a discussion item.
Oh, great.
Sorry.
On the minutes?
On the minutes.
Oh, great. Sorry, I didn't mean to go past that. Go for it, Jim.
Well, I didn't raise my hand, but in the prior agenda minutes, there was a note that the CAC will receive a jobs report, including jobs created before the November CAC meeting.
I will be covering that in the chair report.
Oh, okay, because I haven't received that report.
Yes,
So-
I'll be, it was asked for again in public comment today. I'll be covering that in the chair report.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Can we please have a roll call vote?
Great, thank you. Member Landry.
Yes.
Member Eden.
Yes.
Member Lutz.
Yes.
Member Swoboda. Member Lachman. Member Lachman. Member Tavria. Member Tavria. Member Pacheco.
Abstain?
Member Susan.
Yes.
Member Carr. Member Carr. Come back to Member Carr. Member Hernandez.
Yes.
Member Lewis.
Yes.
Chair Eldred.
Yes. Member Lakshman, would you like to put on this item?
I was on mute and I couldn't get out of the mute. Yes, I am good for that.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Member Carr, are you there? All right. If folks are able to turn on their videos, if your internet can handle it, it would be really great, just so members of the public can see who they're chatting with. Sorry to interrupt, Chair.
The motion passes.
Thank you, Adrian. All right. So, sorry, we're doing this all out of order today, but CAC Chair Report. There are a couple things I want to go over on this, and keep in mind the time, but there are a few things, one of which I will need Adrian to help me discuss a little bit. And that is the, so we don't have a decision on this yet, right? But it does appear that the governor is going to be stopping the state of emergency that enabled the legislation that provided for fully remote meetings. And there are two options that governmental organizations and organizations subject to the Brown Act. And like I said in the last item, we are a quasi-governmental organization, so we are bound by the same rules of engagement, right? And one of those things is the Brown Act. So with the upcoming suspension of the state of emergency, it means that we have to adopt one of two different interpretations of the Brown Act. And one is the one as it was before, and there is another one. And I imagine that Adrian can explain the differences between those two. I don't know that we need to go into it terribly much at this point, because we are just still waiting to find out. I think that's in March. Is that correct, Adrian?
The state of emergency will be ended on February 28th, according to press release from Governor Newsom's office.
Right. So February 28th. So March 1st, we're going to have either return to the old way that the Brown Act was conducted, or a new interpretation of how to hold public meetings, although we have made some significant gains. So it has always been an option for, well, it was before an option for folks to participate in remote meetings, so long as certain rules were followed, public noticing, it's available, the space that you're in is available to members of the public, things like that. The board has not made a decision yet on which of the interpretations it's going to go with. There is some significant concern that has been raised by the public and by members of the board around if we went with the new interpretation, people would have to come to one location. And that location is likely to be our office, which is in Oakland, which is really far for Tracy or Stockton, or frankly, Union City, and depending on traffic, Berkeley. Like it would be really challenging for us to go with the new interpretation that would require us all to be in one place. The old Brown Act would allow us to be in other spaces. One of the things that has been discussed is connecting members of the CAC with their corresponding board member. If they go with the old interpretation of the Brown Act, then what is likely to happen is that, and what, like before, we were able to meet in Hayward, and we went to the city council building and we had our public meetings there, and it was great. And so, because it's accessible to the public, it's near public transportation, it's a place that isn't your home address being put out on all kinds of agendas, that sort of thing. So if we go with the old interpretation of the Brown Act, then we would be able to notice from different meeting spaces, and we could really strongly encourage CAC members and their corresponding board member to facilitate having City Hall or whatever building they're using be available for the CAC member as well. We don't know what that's going to look like yet, and there will probably be lots of feedback on this, is my guess. I have a strong preference for us going to the option that allows for more spaces for community engagement, which I think it would be great if everyone was at their city halls, because then there's more ways for more communities to be able to come down and physically participate if they want to. And it could really increase communication between members of the CAC and their board members, which I think is something that I would like to really encourage, more direct communication between the board and the CAC. But we don't know what that is yet, and I just wanted to give folks a heads up as early as possible that fully remote meetings will be ending with the end of the state of emergency. And how did I do with that, Adrian?
The legislation is AB 2449. It's new legislation which the board will have to consider.
And do you know when they are considering that item?
I do not know that yet.
Okay, so we'll make sure to bring a recommendation on that to the board when it gets on their agenda. I just wanted to put it out for folks to think about now. I don't think we need to go into it too heavily because it's not up for discussion yet. But if you have any questions, please do feel free to reach out to Adrian and myself after this meeting so we can get information to you. Cynthia, I see your hand. Do you have a clarifying question or discussion?
Well, when we were meeting in person, we were meeting at 7 o'clock. That's another consideration, because we had people that traveled. So I just want to point that out. We'd have to look at the time also.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. All right. So, and actually, let's just do these things one point at a time. Are there any other clarifying questions or points to make on this? I had a lot of feelings on it, so. All right. Seeing none.
I'll just jump in for a second, Chair.
Sure.
So the legislation says the majority of the folks have to show up in one place, and then limited number of meetings. So the limited number of meetings may be interpreted to who knows how many. So for teleconferencing, it would be interesting to see how that plays out with the board. I mean, limited number could be 12 a year. That'd be 1 a month, right? So maybe 6 over remote. So we'll see an interpretation and staff recommendation what might look like it. But I think we want more flexibility, not less.
Yes, we agree with you.
Thank you, Chair.
Yep, you bet. Absolutely. And I think, yeah, and so once there's actually solid information, we'll bring that back to everyone. I just want to put that out there that the state of emergency is ending. And also, from a public health perspective, the number of 3-year-olds and 2-year-olds who are getting COVID and being hospitalized right now is really high. So it's not over just because some rules are changing, and please still be vigilant and take care of yourselves. it's still just terrifying for those of us with medically fragile family members. So the next thing I wanted to cover is that on the last agenda, like last meeting ran really long. I'm going to try really hard to have that not happen tonight. But the an item was moved from that agenda to this one, and then everything happened and it didn't get agendized. So I did want to say that there was something emailed out to everyone today at around 1:30, and the legislative update was discussed at the October 19th board meeting. I did want to give you a quick update on SB 846, which is the Diablo Canyon Power Plant Life Extension. And again, I'm going to do this really quick. If people want to have further discussion on it or get more information on it, there is a full summary. You can watch the discussion that happened, the legislative update that was provided to the board. But here's this. PG&E was set to retire Diablo Canyon in 2024 for one of the units, and 2025 for unit 2. Because of those pending closures, all kinds of updates have not been done, retrofits have not been done. The Nuclear Regulatory Committee license was set to expire like at the same time. PG&E stated their intention to close Diablo Canyon, and this is significant for us, not only because of the nuclear power component, but because of the percentage of the PCIA that Diablo Canyon represents. So in August, Governor Newsom announced his intention to keep the plant open and requested the federal government for $1 billion to support keeping Diablo Canyon open longer. Initially, lawmakers didn't like it, but they negotiated with Newsom, and eventually it passed with a wide margin. So what the statute does is that it permits the extension of Diablo Canyon's life for 5 years beyond its planned retirement, so 2029 and 2030 for the 2 reactors. It directs how cost recovery can be managed. An unfortunate amount of that is just lent to the discretion of the CPUC. And it does exclude Diablo Canyon from future resource planning, except for resource adequacy procurement, and the CPUC is going to have to explain what that means. And it creates a clean energy reliability investment plan funded at $1 billion. So the loan is for $1.4 billion. It says $600 million initially from the general fund for Diablo Canyon extension. And to get more into this, and again, this is not a discussion on whether or not we should have nuclear power or whether or not nuclear power is good or anything else. Please go watch the presentation that was given to the board. It's an important thing. And I'm going to read the one little part of the slide. I hate reading slides, but here you go. The bill would require the PUC to take certain actions to enable the operator of the Diablo Canyon power plant to recover reasonable costs and expenses of operating Diablo Canyon as provided, including the imposition of a fully non-bypassable charge on all customers of electrical corporations, electric service providers, and community choice aggregators, and would require the Public Utility Commission to authorize the operator to recover in rates an operating fee for each megawatt hour generated by the power plant as specified. So
there would be a non-bypassable charge that would get passed on to our customers, even if it's not through the form of the PCIA. We would continue having to pay for Diablo Canyon to function. It impacts our rates, it impacts all kinds of things. And so we do want to give you a heads up on that. They did present an entire legislative deck and how legislation passed. If we have the ability, we will visit it at the next session. But this is, it was an informational item, and we were specifically looking at the effects of that particular piece of legislation. So please do go read it or listen to it if you are interested in what's happening there. The third thing, and I think the final thing that I'm covering in this report is that of the jobs report. So again, we're going to go with a little bit of background here. The staff did respond to repeated requests of the public to know how many jobs and union jobs were created through the local development business plan. Like, how have we as an agency performed in our goal and our promise to create local jobs? And that was sent to me, and I didn't send it out because of a comment that happened at the board meeting, which I'm going to cover in just a second. This is a metric that we were supposed to be receiving updates on. It is a stated goal in our founding documents. It's specifically outlined in the local development business plan, and it was first requested by a member of the CAC a year and a half ago, and has been continuously requested since then by members of the public, including during public comment today. And so I really want to say thank you to staff for putting together this report. I'm impressed with the work that you're doing. And I'm struggling a little bit. I'm just going to read the email that I received when I was like, hey, can I talk about this thing? Can I send this out to everyone? Because at the last meeting, at the last board meeting, member Hannon stated that he was concerned about the time that the CAC is using, like how much staff time we're using. And it was a comment that was made in response to the chair report, where I thank staff for doing this, because I think that staff does a lot of work that they don't always get acknowledged for. And as a staff member of a governmental organization, I know how much work we do that is not seen by the public. And so I just try and say thank you to them where I have the opportunity to do so. And member Hannon said that he was concerned about the CAC use of staff time, and requested that it be discussed at exec. And so they said they would discuss it at exec. I emailed staff and said, hey, is there any reason why this can't be public? Like, I received this thing, but it wasn't distributed to everyone, so just want to verify. And the response was professional and polite, and it said, I think it's fine to talk about this information, although we won't be able to elaborate much beyond what's presented below. As far as discussing it at a future meeting, the same constraints would apply. Our staff will not have more info to offer beyond what we've already provided. If there are requests for additional information related to this topic, we will have to await further direction from EBCE's board to appropriately allocate staff time and resources to any and all follow-up. This is currently the case with all CAC requests for staff time and resources beyond what is already devoted to administering and managing the CAC meetings. And I've been struggling
with how to respond to that. And so as the chair of this body and a member of the board of directors, but also as like just as me, I don't know. Earlier in this meeting, twice now it's come up that we are a quasi-governmental organization. And this is a legal term. It has a legal definition. It comes with all kinds of restrictions and requirements and obligations and everything else. And one of them is the Brown Act, which we also just discussed. During my day job, I work for Alameda County, so I'm quite familiar with the obligations of Brown Act compliant bodies. My department reports regularly to the Board of Supervisors in public meetings. And we are also responsive to the needs and directions of the board. But like the team that I lead, we are working really hard right now in an intensive public engagement process with affected stakeholders to update our program and make it responsive to the needs of the public that we were created to serve. And it feels like we are remaking our corner of government to make it serve people. And I'm really proud of the work that I'm doing with Alameda County. Like, I'm really proud of that work and I work really hard at it. And this feels like a potentially dangerous turn in direction. It feels like what is wrong with government, that it is exclusionary and not inclusive. And as the CAC, we were very specifically formed to engage with the public and bring their concerns to the board. That is how we were founded. And our ability to discuss items, to agendize things, to raise the concerns of the public, or even have staff time beyond running our meetings is not only is it being threatened, but that threat is being adopted before any change has been directed. And I find myself baffled and having a pretty strong reaction, both emotionally, but quite logically as well. And so I at the next exec meeting, they're going to be having this discussion. I really want folks to know about it. I want you to go to the executive committee and express your thoughts. I want you to submit your thoughts in writing this if you can't make it to that meeting. And I feel like when we started, we were allies with staff and that we worked together. And I was so proud of being part of this. And I'm still so proud of being part of this, but this feels like a dangerous turn. And I'm a little bit at a loss of what to do about it. And so I am turning to the members of the public. The people who are here right now have been around for a long time, and they care really deeply. And the members of this body, all of you are volunteering and putting in a lot more time and energy, some of you for years and years and years. And I'd like to hear your feedback on this, but I really encourage you to please make sure that the board hears your feedback and that exec hears your feedback, and to start talking to your member of the board directly so they hear what you are. You don't have to agree with me, but they should hear how you feel about it. And so I guess I'd like to turn that over. And that is what I'm covering today in the chair report. And with that, we will see if there is any public comment on anything, or any members of this committee who would like to weigh in on anything that was just said during the report. Was there any public comment received prior to 5 p.m. yesterday?
There was no written public comment received for this item.
All right. I do see one member of the public with their hand raised. And so Jessica Tovar, we will recognize you for 3 minutes.
Great, thank you. Jessica Tovar, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Jessica Tovar with East Bay Clean Power Alliance. Yes, I want to just acknowledge when we advocated for this East Bay Community Energy Program, we were very clear that we wanted some, sorry, I'm getting a lot of like background noise. Maybe it would help if people were muted. It gets confusing when I'm trying to speak. Okay, so pretty much what I'm saying is when we advocated for the community choice program, it was really important to us. The community had a voice in this program, which is why we advocated originally for community stakeholders to actually sit on the board with the rest of the board.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you, Jessica. Can you start him over? And can folks who are not muted please mute? Thank you. All right, keep going, Jessica.
Thank you, that's helpful. So what I'm saying is it was very important for us to advocate for a local community choice program that really centered community voices and community stakeholders, which is why we originally advocated for stakeholders to sit on the board with board members. And what ended up happening was we got a community advisory committee, and at the time it was a 9-person community advisory committee. And we were able to advocate that at least the chair of that committee sit, with the rest of the board. And so, you know, part of the reason why East Bay Community Energy has always been applauded is for its really being centered around community needs. The local development business plan advocacy came out of community voices and the stakeholders that advocated for the program. And a lot of that really gets hashed out here in this space, and then that message gets carried by the chair into the board meetings that happen on Wednesdays. So I just wanted to just reiterate, like, appreciation for everyone who's been here, both staff and community representatives, because it's really important that we're working together to actually create a community choice program that is stronger and really represents the needs of the community. That's the whole point. And really, you know, that's the way we're going to win community benefits, more creation of clean energy jobs, more, you know, circulation of local wealth, more opportunities, build more resilience, and address the local and global pollution issues that we want to really change, you know, our communities into no longer, you know, being dumped on by dirty energy, but actually be uplifted within this local clean energy economy. And so I just wanted to raise that again, because I feel like people are losing sight of what this is supposed to be. And we need to be regrounded in that. And that only happens with advocacy from the community. And this is the space for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Audrey, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. And Olivia, I really congratulate you for bringing this up and being sensitive to it, and you know, wanting to reverse this trend. I think that it's in the nature of the way EBCE is structured that favors the ascendancy of staff, not just because of the highly technical issues involved oftentimes, but also the turnover, both in CAC membership, both in board membership, and even for the advocates who stand behind these public representatives. Yeah, we too, you know, suffer turnover, and unlike the staff people, we're not paid. And elected board officials really have are a lot more vulnerable as well. So I don't see any easy solutions to this. I mean, I don't want to castigate the staff for this because I think they are doing a good job. And just the nature of the energy market, the distribution, transmission lines are so technical that they're naturally, they prize the kind of information and expertise that helps them do their job. But that said, I think that's a problem that we have in the wider sense with a free market economy, that it's competition. And I don't think that's right. And I think that one of the ways we can combat that is to try to reserve part of the arena for non-competitive, I don't want to use the word capitalistic, but I mean non-free market kinds of approaches and solutions. So hopefully, I intend to submit a written comment, if not speak also at the next exec meeting. But I think we should all be aware of how our world is structured, and we have to make fundamental commitments to change it. Thanks.
Thank you, Audrey. Tom, you're recognized.
Thank you, Anna Olivia. I'm really sorry to hear that you and the contributions of the CAC are so undervalued. And it's kind of typical of public agencies to love-hate relationship with the public. They are obligated, but they some agencies like to keep the public at arm's length because it tends to interfere with the way they work. I think you've got to all stand up and make the case. I mean, without a CAC, I mean, what exactly is the point of the public's participation in anything? I mean, from my own experience, I mean, I generally am ignored by the board. I mean, I never get any feedback from them on all the issues that I raise. The CAC is perhaps the one part of EBCE that's actually been a conduit for my concerns about EBCE behavior. So EBCE is one of the dirtiest power providers in Northern California, in spite of what Alex likes to say about, nuclear power and all this other BS. But if you guys weren't there, who would we talk to? Who would the public come to when they have an issue they want to raise? Nobody, really. I mean, EBCE would become like a little mini PG&E. You'd have to be a shareholder or something to have your voice heard. So anyway, I hope you guys will really press on this issue. You're a member of the board, Anna Olivia. You've got rights. Stand up for them, and good luck.
Thank you, Tom. So looking at all right, so we will go to discussion from the committee, reminding folks that it is 7:42 and we have one more heady item, but this is, what do we do? So Member Lutz.
Yeah, I wanted to point out how this feels in some ways very similar to what happened with the $15 million to Children's Benioff Hospital, that the staff decided something was the right way to go, and then went ahead and did it in at grave risk to violating, the founding documents, perhaps violating state laws and regulations. I'm not sure that this rises to quite that level of illegality, but it feels very, very similar. And I would be interested if maybe it does. The other point I wanted to make is I've been sitting on the CAC for, I guess it's about a year now, or a little bit less. And there have been several times at board meetings where board members have expressed their appreciation for the CAC participation, ideas, and feedback. And I'm not sure Member Hannon was one of those, although he might have been. So it seems strange to limit the interactions with the CAC and staff. So I want to strongly support you, Ann Olivia, on making sure this gets changed. Thank you.
Thank you. And to clarify, nothing has been decided yet. They will be discussing it at the next exec meeting. And
Except that's not true. You just said you got a letter from staff saying they couldn't talk about this more with you, which you hadn't gotten before.
that is true. Thank you. And I am, thank you for that. Is that okay? Member Hernandez?
Thank you, Chair. It's disappointing to hear on the pushback when you are volunteering your time and energy to make sure this organization serves its vision, its purpose to bring more clean energy and power to the community. As a former board member, I know this committee is quite important to review and understand and bring those insights to the full board, so that way we have better information from the community. Given with that, when you're on the board, you have various commitments that you're trying to serve on various agencies, and this is great to have a sounding board, insight, community interested folks to really help make better decisions. Just like nuclear, like should we take it or not take it? That was a heavy subject. I know there's been other actions been done, but I see that Alex, you're here, Howard, I know you're here. I think it's important to take the insights and collaborate with the chair, and I know you do your best, and I know there's limited resources and time and energy, but we do have some positive cash flow, and I know you are hiring more, so having that liaison and resources are important, so that we don't drop the ball as an agency to make sure we're successful in delivering the best and cleanest power to our community members and making sure that we leave it better than we found it. And I think taking this time, this treasure from this committee to the board and your staff is quite valuable. That's what I'm going to say. So thank you very much, and their support any which way, Chair Eldred. And thank you, staff, members of the committee.
Thank you, Member Hernandez. Member Pacheco?
Thank you for that report back, Chair Eldred. And I also want to say I appreciate the comments from the public and from the other CAC members. I know that all the public commenters have been doing this for years and were part of getting this agency up and running, so I appreciate that. So I'm sorry, clarification. So Board Member Hannon made a motion and it was seconded, and this is a proposal that's going before the executive board. I'm just trying to make sure I understand this.
No, Member Hannon asked that it get sent to exec, and I think there was a motion and it was agreed to go to exec. There was the discussion was to look at the process through which the CAC can agendize things and how much staff time we can take. I can look that up. It's in the minutes, so I can look that up. But the spirit, the actual wording of it, but the spirit of it was to have the executive committee look at the way, like at how we can request things from staff time and how things are agendized. So I sit on an unfortunate number of committees, like I need to be paring down for sure, but in our other committees, in other county agencies, the community advisory committees and the policy advisory councils, and even the subcommittees and the ad hoc groups and this stuff, they say things like, we need a white paper on that. When can you find that, right? So we have never as a body done that. We have never, ever done that. We have never had enough staff for us to even feel like we can ask those kinds of questions at all. And I have so much respect and admiration for the staff that we have, and I'm really, really grateful for them. And I don't want anyone to feel like this is an attack there. I was concerned about the direction from the board, so that really needs to be out there. So I think that the direction that was given was that exec would talk about it. But it felt contentious during the meeting. And so it was directed to go to exec. And if I'm wrong on that, like Alex, I'm sure you remember, Adrian, I'm sure you do. If you could provide clarity on that, it would be helpful.
That's the clarity is what we're waiting for from the board. The staff is in a kind of a tough spot right here because we've received some incomplete direction from the board, and so we're to be prudent. We're waiting for the board on further direction on how to allocate staff time. That's not to say that we can't discuss the information that's before you, but I would qualify as saying if there are follow-up questions that would require additional staff time, that may have to wait until we receive more direction from the board. But I think it's perfectly fine to share the information that you have. We can have a robust discussion on it if you like. And we'd love to hear more about the other agencies and how their protocols for allocating staff time to committees and bodies such as this, so that we have and our board has examples to go from. We certainly want to be providing as much transparency and information to this body and the public as possible. That's our goal.
Thank you. And yeah, we'll email it out to everybody and post it online. It's not agendized tonight, so we can't really talk about it. Okay. Because it's not agendized, and the public hasn't a chance to look at it and that kind of stuff. And we have many constituent groups who will be quite interested. And again, thank you so much for putting that together. I know that was effort, and I'm deeply grateful for the staff who worked on that to put this thing out. It is a resource that we actually needed to help defend and grow CCAs, right? Member Pacheco, I'm sorry, I think we cut you off there.
No, thank you. So I often rely on the chair's report backs. I didn't watch the last board meeting. I'm going to go watch it and read the transcript because I want to see exactly what was said. I am very concerned about this. And to hear that this jobs report, which I was one of the people that requested, might have been the, we'll kick this off, concerns me. The job report has most of the things that the CAC does ask for when we ask for something. It was explicitly because it was something that when we created this agency, that we were going to have metrics on, that we're going to monitor. It was one of the things that we decided to build into this, and we haven't done this to this point. It was also asked for to help defend this agency from those that might not support this agency, and to help provide ways for it to expand it in other cities and counties. So I'm very concerned about this. I appreciate everything that everyone said, and I will check the transcript and participate moving forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Pacheco. Member Hu?
Great, thanks. Thanks everyone, and thank you, Chair Eldred. Just want to acknowledge all the work that you've done, Chair Eldred, and so many others in a really challenging dynamic. Thank you for offering this back. I'm watching the clock and trying to talk very quickly. I'm also staff at a government institution, and so public servant to public servant. I know there were like several of us on this call. I just really want to acknowledge, like, yes, staff are oftentimes doing so much behind the scenes, and community engagement in particular, or just any form of public participation can absolutely be, right, time consuming, resource intensive, hard for lack of better word. And I do like so see that as still very foundational to the success, the effectiveness, right, the credibility, the responsibility of government. It's been, I think, you know, really important defining feature of EBCE and the CCA model more broadly. And I think, you know, we heard that in public comment just even earlier today. I do absolutely think the goal is for all of us to be working together to arrive at stronger outcomes, to arrive at stronger programs that better serve our people, more inclusion, more engagement, shared investment, skin in the game. And so I just want to offer, you know, for what it's worth, like when I am asking questions, I won't speak for others, but I assume kind of good intent all across the board. Like, I interpret us asking questions here of staff, like coming from a place of care and curiosity and, you know, deep interest in EBCE's success and our ability to actually serve people. And I think that's important. And so I don't know, wanted to offer that. Like, I think hard questions and accountability are part of how we get there. And I think like the utility of this body ideally is in, you know, helping as a gauge for EBCE on communicating the good things that you all are already doing, inviting input from this body as you're building and going, forming those relationships and strategies. I think I'm, you know, as a sort of a new kid here, I'm a little perplexed by like this, what seems kind of hostile and confusing dynamic, because I think my operating understanding was like, we're on the same team. Like, we're trying to figure out how does EBCE better serve customers. Let's ask questions and figure out how we can do that together, because there are so many important opportunities here. And this model is such an important way for us to show what happens when we have a really healthy, vibrant ecosystem of folks that are invested. Anyway, so I'll get off my soapbox, but just wanted to like offer that back. Like, the questions are coming from care and curiosity. I'm very confused by this dynamic. I can't attend on Wednesday. I will absolutely write something, and yeah, happy to talk offline.
Thank you for that. And it will go to the exec committee, not to the meeting on Wednesday. We're gonna, so Howard just raised his hand, and then we're gonna need to do a quick poll, guys. It's 7:56, and the healthy communities is one of the most important agenda items we got. Howard, if you wanted to weigh in, go for it, and then we should just make sure that folks can maintain a quorum while we discuss healthy communities. And
I just wanted to share a really quick perspective and certainly move on to what is an important item that I'm sure folks are interested in hearing more about. I just want to share my part from staff's perspective. I don't think there was any intention for any contentiousness, you know, with that level of comment from Alex. I know we had, we were sort of in the backgrounds discussing it. I won't try to speak on behalf of the board and the intent of, you know, what Director Hyden said, so that, you know, that's not something that I want to even attempt to do. I just want to say that I think the engagement from staff and the CSC has always been productive, and you know, and all with the same intent, which is to meet the various great goals that this agency has set forth. I will say, you know, just trying to guess where that sort of comes from is I think staff is just really stretched thin right now. There's a lot of different priorities that we're trying to work on with our board in the various sort of ad hoc meetings, whether that's audit, finance related or whatnot, or local programs related. And there have been more conversations about sort of recruiting and headcount and how to stay up with that. And so I think I'll just say with with the positive intent that I think the board is sort of feeling that from staff. And that's not in the context of the CAC at all. It's just sort of in general, I think there's a lot of issues to work on, and we're wanting to make sure that we're adequately addressing them all. So I just wanted to share that as a general thought, and I hope that this can be viewed as a positive dialogue that can occur and wasn't intended to be contentious, I think. Certainly not from staff's perspective.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And Member Souza.
Thank you. I just really quickly want to say, I just want to know, also as a newcomer, has anything changed over the years, and has anything changed to today? And should anything change to make us more effective? Is there any way to measure that? Can anybody give any suggestions? So I just wanted to ask those questions, put it out there. That's it. Thank you.
So I can answer a little bit from my perspective, and I think this is a natural part of growing pains, frankly. Like when we started, like I was on the committee that selected Nick, right? Like I got to participate in the interview process as we together selected who was going to lead the organization. Because there wasn't staff, there was much closer communication and working relationships between the board and the CAC, because we were kind of who we had, right? And as we've grown, and then so I was the first chair of the CAC, which was a massive honor, and got to help create the documents that like this is how we want to function, this is our goal. And then very happily, at the end of 2 years, love to watch Mary and Jane do a really fantastic job. And then we had a very small body at that point, and other folks didn't have capacity to take on chairing. And so I agreed to do it while we brought new folks on and got them oriented, and so people could feel more comfortable taking a leadership role. I'm not interested in being chair forever. It's not the goal. But in the first 2 years, we had meetings twice a month, and setting every agenda was something that we did with the CEO and with the chair of the board and the chair of the CAC. Like we worked on those things together. We had strategy sessions. There was a lot of very close inner workings between staff and the CAC and the board on different committees, on developing of the local development business plan, on public engagement, on outreach, and it was this really intensely thing. And now we have a lot more staff, which is great. That is fantastic. And along with that, we've been growing even faster than they've been able to staff. So I think that the demands on staff have outpaced their growth. And also now that there's this structure, there's kind of less collaboration, like direct collaboration. And so I think it's just part of that is growing pains. And again, I could not have more respect for so many of the folks that we work with. They're really fantastic. And I'm bringing this to highlight something and encourage folks to take a look at it, and then to talk to the board at the exec committee in particular, or when the recommendation goes from the exec committee to the board, the larger board, to say, this is why I'm engaged. This is why this is important. And I'm not even sure I knew what I was doing when I just knew this had to come here. And like I said, I was confused about how to respond. And what I feel now is that people should hear why you all are here and what made you volunteer, and the groups that you are representing, and like the perspectives that you bring. This is one of the most technically adept CACs I've ever seen. It is wild. Like y'all are really an impressive group of people. And so I think that there's some growth that's happening, and that isn't always very smooth. Okay. Boy, I appreciate y'all so much. If Member Souza, if you could lower your hand really quick, because I'm going to ask people to do a quick straw poll here. It's 8 o'clock. I would really like to cover the healthy communities item because it is an action item. If anybody needs to leave this meeting at 8, can you please raise your hand so we can guarantee that we can still have a quorum? All right. We have one member who needs to leave. Adrian, would we still have quorum?
Yes, we will still have quorum.
All right. Then Joel, I hope you stay on as long as you can. And when you need to jump off, you need to jump off, and that's okay.
Sure, I'm going to stay as long as I can. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Then with that, we will go to agenda item 6, healthy communities. Staff will describe a plan to develop a program proposal to deploy $15 million in local development funds to deliver home electrification to households where one or more residents suffer from asthma. And I'm not sure the staff that is presenting this, but thank you for being patient while we got here.
Thank you, Chair Eldred. Yes, that would be me again. Alex Georgia, Public Engagement Manager. Before we jump into it, I just wanted to see if the members of the committee have had a chance to see the staff report on this item too. That was posted on the as part of the agenda. And thank you very much. Thank you, Adrian. Yeah, I for the sake of time, I did just want to make sure that everyone had a chance to see the recommendations here, especially those that are numbered 1 through 7 there, because I think that really gets to the crux of this. And I know lots of times it's kind of more pleasant to look at a PowerPoint slide than a staff report, but the staff report really does contain some of the key elements to what's being proposed and what will be going before the board, both in the near term and the long term. So if you don't mind, I would just kind of like to run through these 7 points real quick. And then if we want to elaborate more with the slides, happy to do so. But the first is that, so the amount that's being proposed, and again, as everyone in the committee here, I know is aware, but for the members of the public who maybe haven't had a chance to have the historical context with this has been an iterative process, and the latest iteration is what we have before us now. We've integrated a lot of feedback, both from this committee, from members of the public, from our board. So this has been a real collaborative process in that regard. So the proposal that's before you now is to develop a program that would deploy $15 million over the course of 3 years of local development funds to deliver home electrification retrofits targeted at households that are low income or where at least one resident suffers from asthma. And again, the goal here is to try to really work with partners that are out there that can help us capitalize on the funds that EBCE has to direct specifically at electrification retrofits. That's the skin in the game that EBCE would be providing, as well as our technical expertise, to try to try to find other agencies or public healthcare providers that can match funds with their expertise, since we are not experts on healthcare or conducting these types of studies. So going now to number 3 here, as I mentioned before, prioritizing low-income households and multifamily housing. We're trying to, again, prove out what I think a lot of us know intuitively, that electrification retrofits will improve indoor air quality, but we want to be able to work with partners to demonstrate that out through studies, empirical data. And then beyond that, also to see what the health outcomes, hopefully improvements, would be from those electrifications. So again, number 5 here, seeking to partner with a healthcare provider of some kind to help us conduct that research, or really to conduct the research, not help us, but they would be the ones conducting it. We'd be the ones who would be administering the electrification retrofits that they could then study. I don't think I need to read the rest of these verbatim, but as you'll see, we would be coordinating with local government agencies as well, including Stop Waste and colleagues in the healthcare industry. and again, this would be to target the kind of like the intersectionality here of indoor air pollution and fuel switching to from natural gas primarily to electricity. Adrian, if you wouldn't mind, would you mind moving on to the slides for me? Assuming that would still be helpful. Yes, thank you. Could you go forward one, please? Thank you. So again, for more details, we're talking about approximately 1,000 electrification retrofits. Again, within our service area, targeting residents, at least one that suffers from asthma. And again, it would be emphasizing low-income and disadvantaged communities or frontline communities. What would also be required of us, I mean, us as staff, is to establish the partnerships in order to identify those homes, because that's not information that comes up easily in like load usage or anything like that of the very important and valuable data that we have as an energy agency. We don't necessarily have the information on this level of demographics, so that would require partnerships to identify those homes and where those 1,000 or so home electrification retrofits should be targeted, and then to pair that with the research that could measure the indoor air quality before and after those retrofits, as well as any health outcomes that would seem to correlate with those retrofits. Adrian, would you mind moving on to the next slide, please? Thank you. The real emphasis here, especially that came from the feedback that we received, is to really have EBCE's funding and role in this largely directed towards those retrofits. So we already have these programs. We're already trying to expand them. This Healthy Communities partnership would simply be capitalizing off of that work that we are already aiming to do by creating something that would be of value to the whole community and industry by proving out any correlations that exist between the retrofits themselves, indoor air quality, and health outcomes. And what we've put here are just examples of the types of agencies that might be funding partners that could match that $15 million that EBCE would be committing over the course of 3 years for those retrofittation projects. Next slide, please, Adrian, if you don't mind. So I know this is kind of an eyesore here, but the goal here is to have this more fully fleshed out, this program, through board approval in 2023, early 2023. This currently will be going before our board on Wednesday, as far as I'm aware, but the program details and a lot of the partnerships and a lot of this still has yet to be worked out and determined as we continue to iterate. So the hope and expectation is that in early 2023, our board will be able to consider and approve, with input and feedback from this body and from the public, a more comprehensive program. Why don't I pause there? I think that's the last slide, but why don't I pause there and see if there are questions?
No.
That was great. That was super efficient and you hit all the important stuff, right? Just nailed it right out. That's awesome. I'm going to encourage folks who are not muted to mute themselves and not speaking. And so at this time, Alex, would you like us to go to members of the public, like for general comment, or are you looking for clarification or anything?
I leave that to you. No, we're ready for feedback from the committee and from the public, however you'd like to proceed, Chair Eldred.
Excellent. Then Adrian, was there any written correspondence received on this item by 5 o'clock yesterday? Or I do know we have a member of the public with their hands raised.
There was no written comment, but there's one member of the public with hand raised.
Great, we'll stick with 3 minutes.
Great, thank you. Nia Tisdale, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Hi, Naya Tisdale, Local Clean Energy Alliance. Yeah, I just have a few questions and comments. The first being, where are asthma incidences the highest within EBCE territory specifically? I think this is really important information to have specifically laid out. And then the $50 million should definitely be earmarked for low-income electrification and specifically disadvantaged communities. And when talking about the Cal Enviro screen, many disadvantaged communities are not represented on that. So I think this is something to keep in mind when identifying disadvantaged communities. And then another thing is we definitely need detailed budget and details of this program. And I think the last thing I would ask is what metrics will be used and how and when will the progress of this program be reported. I think just moving forward, continuing to communicate these details would be most helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will go first. Do you want to respond or do you want to take all the questions and respond all at once?
For the sake of efficiency, why don't we have all the questions come? And I mean, if you like me, if you think it's just as well for me to answer, I'll just to that last comment.
Let's, as it was the only public comment, go for it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I would say agree to agree. Yes, there's we are aware that Cal Enviro screen has limitations, so we wouldn't be relying on that. And in fact, we EBCE really will be relying on our partners who have more expertise, partners to be identified that could help us identify where the frontline communities and where those who are suffering the legacies of the fossil fuel industry are most densely concentrated. The assumption can be it's going to be near the refineries, near the highway corridors, but we don't want to rely on assumptions. And yes, it will be targeted to the goal will be to target towards low income and frontline communities. The details of all of this have yet, of a lot of this have yet to be fleshed out of the program, and those will be going for review and discussion and approval before our board, and of course before this committee as well. I hope that answers the question.
That was great. Member Souza.
Yeah, I go into a lot of homes. I go into multi-family homes, and there about 60% of the homes have gas stoves and ovens. They're terrible. They leak gas. I don't know if you saw the last word on that about benzene. Yeah, so it's gas leaks are causing benzene poison, which is in 99% of the stoves that they tested. So they need to go. Same thing with the wall furnaces. Multifamily homes have wall furnaces. That's gas leaking, possible carbon monoxide. So those are real targets. The wall furnaces can go to be electrified with mini splits. So the mini split heat pumps do not go to electric resistance. Electric resistance heating is very, very expensive. So if we can go to mini splits, heat pumps, that's the way to go. So that's just my weigh in on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Pacheco.
I want to say first of all, thank you, Alex and staff for this presentation. The thing that kicked this off, there was definitely not unanimity around where the original $15 million would go. I think this is an excellent proposal. I think it's elegant and it makes a lot of sense. I support it. I want to echo the public comment that there's a lot of asthma households that in disadvantaged communities, we could use $150 million. I do support that. We try to use all that $15 million in those communities and in low-income households. And then this is just a wild thought. Again, I think it's a beautiful proposal. I know GridWorks was also took a look in EBCE territory about electrification and natural gas decommissioning. And they had identified multiple sites in Oakland, Hayward, San Leandro, and a couple other EBCE cities. And I doubt, I don't know how we could make that criteria of the sites that they've identified as candidates for larger electrification, but maybe that's something that we could look at the GridWorks natural gas decommissioning sites that they've picked over. Thanks.
Member Lutz.
Yeah, I want to echo the support for this proposal. I think it's really good. And I'm looking forward to the details on the budgets and the partners and timelines and things like that. A couple questions I would like to highlight and bring in, and I suspect Lorraine would agree with me on this, is don't just do electrification in the homes, also do shell improvements, which is an easy one to explain because it will reduce the outdoor, the ventilation and bringing in outdoor. If you don't tighten the homes, it doesn't do any good if the outdoor air is really polluted and getting in. So you need to tighten up the shell. And while you're doing that, this is the same sort of stuff that the LMI program is talking about. So sort of build on that. And when you go into a home to do electrification, do as much as you can to improve the home and do it well. So it's much easier to do all those updates at one time if you don't have to be coming and going to the home. And another thing I would think is that, and this, Alex, you said that this is planned, but I would like to stress, engage with the community-based organizations and the local agencies that, like the Alameda County Public Health Agency, Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, that already have a lot of knowledge of where asthma is prevalent and how to address it. And then again, the same question I had with the LMI program is I would really like to see addressing, I guess I'm really concerned that renters will not be able to take advantage of it. So it'd be really good to see some thought put into how to reach people who don't live in, who live in homes they don't own. But those homes need all this work too. But again, this is a great proposal and I'm looking forward to seeing the full details. Thank you.
Member Hernandez.
Thank you and good evening. Thank you very much for staying late. Some of these late meetings I've been used in the past, but through the committees, not so much. But this is important. The $50 million grant, or supporting electrification, reducing asthma in the community. And Alex, thanks again for the work, and with you, Howard, and other staff members. Out of the $50 million, is that $10,000 for incentives and then $5K in loans? So it can be a combination of both to do some things like induction cooking and heat pumps and other things. Is that what I understand is the sort of the high level summary of this?
May I, Chair Eldred?
Yeah.
Yes, I don't know that it's been determined on what would be loans versus grants. I'm not sure that that's been determined yet, but my intuition would be something therein.
Okay. I was studying indoor air quality sensors for a while around particulate matter, VOCs, TVOCs, and humidity. So I think it's going to be important when you do do the pre and post analysis, you understand what you started with and sort of how you measured that. And some of the products out there can centralize that information off Wi-Fi. You can track, see where it's getting better, where it's peaking, and wonder if that double loop learning can then say, hey, this is improved or not. Maybe there is leakage of outdoor air impacting the house, and you've done everything you can indoors, but not sealing those windows. Like CC member Lutz stated, important. You know, even when I was doing cooking, like, hey, what's driving my numbers up? Because I was testing one of the modules, understanding what it was and what's driving it. So, you know, and even like some small, it goes to 2.5, and even viruses, other stuff like that can be picked up. But just for the group's perspective, understanding that I just was elected to the Eden Health District Board, which, you know, I've been appointed and now elected to that for 4 years. So I was up for through the appointment and election. My role is also to improve health outcomes in this district that serves about 400,000 residents, which was the Eden Health District area that includes San Leandro, Castro Valley, Hayward, and nearby unincorporated areas. And we know from statistics that the unincorporated areas are suffering more from lack of some resources, health outcomes, what have you. So it'd be nice to partner, Alex, and see in that capacity how we can maybe do a match. Whatever you do there, then how can they bring more? Because we have another properties that we sold and we have some cash coming through. We're setting up La Familia with a clinic in South Hayward, about $400,000 grant, $420,000. We rounded up. So we'll be doing that hopefully in partnership with them. And then we'll provide another $300,000 of resources to other nonprofits in the area to improve and advance those health outcomes in the community. So I'd look to see, understand how we can partner and liaise through what's recommended, and maybe we can match it, right? So we see how we can do some impacts and doubling that impact in that part of the community that I'm elected to serve now. So I thought I'd just throw that out there, see how I can sort of brainstorm with you and the rest of the crew.
Look forward to that.
All right.
That's awesome. Member who?
I'm so sorry to be chatting so much, everybody, tonight.
Go.
All right, let's do it. Okay. A couple minor things. One, I'm seeing that the staff report, I think, says prioritizing low income and multifamily housing, but the slides say low income and disadvantaged communities. So just like asking for clarification on which of those buckets we're prioritizing. And then sidebar, maybe folks already know this, I'm a huge map nerd. I'm very familiar with Cal and Virus Green. So I do really want to echo the concerns we heard in public comment. Great to hear that staff is already aware. I'm super happy to work offline on thinking through some of that. I definitely share Ernie's question on, just clarification, does this apply to renters? Some other ideas for staff to maybe consider as you all are shaping it, shaping the program, age of housing stock, obviously, might be a really important indicator as you're thinking about just critical deferred maintenance, and more likely than not, low income folks of color are renters in really old buildings. And so the building envelope questions, but also the, potential gains on electrification from a health standpoint could be really important there. Care and Farah customers also feels like another option that would be a pretty easy to find data point. And then of course, just acknowledging that, under COVID and the current economic crisis, household income has just shifted so much. So whoever has the best available data, I would recommend thinking about anything as recent as possible. I do just want to bring up that I think in the past there were some concerns that, I expressed and maybe others too on, ensuring that there's an effort around displacement avoidance. So I hear the intention of the study. I think it's really valuable. Some ideas that you could think about are maybe, distributing information on tenants protections, renters rights, information on other energy efficiency opportunities, other kinds of program enrollments. There's an opportunity to kind of think through the protective piece to make sure we're really serving households as much as possible if we're already there. And then definitely hear that a lot of the program details are forthcoming. I hope, for what it's worth, that this body can help staff brainstorm what some of those next steps might be if you're, shaping an RFP or trying to idea or recruit, potential partners. I think this body could be a really valuable resource in thinking through those local experts that you mentioned. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. That's great feedback. Really appreciate it, Member Hugh. Sorry, Chair Eldred, I think you're on mute.
Boy, that has just been not my strength tonight. Member Souza, your hand is raised. Would you like to
Hi there
make a
again.
comment?
It's me again. I had an idea about renters, and I think that energy efficiency can be part of that. I know that I've been successful in some cases where we've been able to suggest modifications that would go towards reducing the energy bill, you know, maybe around 30% by improving the shell, say. And these energy efficiency improvements are not interesting to the landlord because, you know, they don't care. They're not paying the bill. So if there could be some sort of a way to incorporate the reduction of the renter's PG&E bill type thing, and then incorporate that into the improvement, eventually the renter will pay off, say, whatever the improvements are to the building. I know it's a very convoluted mess, but it might be a way to somehow monetize improvements on efficiency. But I could talk to you more about that, or somebody more about that. But it just kind of occurs to me that might be a way to help lower income folks by reducing their bill, which would in turn give them more money to maybe pay for some of the improvements to their what they're renting. So, anyway, that's it.
Thank you. So I'm gonna do this real quick, and then I will be seeking a motion to approve staff's recommendation, or whatever motion you want to make. So just to throw a couple things in there, Bay Ren is hosting a panel on Wednesday on tenant protections around home electrification. I want to echo and support the comments that were made about both building envelope improvements and energy efficiency as essential parts of equitable electrification. And engaging with other municipal programs that are targeting the same or adjacent populations. There's a big county program right now that's going out doing testing of lead levels in children's blood. So this is going to be quite a lot of overlap. And if it isn't overlap for this program, for sure, there would be really good homes to be getting evaluations on for maybe the next step of this program. And because you like with those kinds of partnerships with these other programs that are really hitting some of the same target populations or target adjacent populations, then we can increase our outreach efforts and like even letting people know like, hey, if your family member has asthma, reach out to this program. They're doing some efforts here, or seeing if we can utilize some of those things to let folks know about the CARE, FARA, and Medical Baseline Program. We know that the majority of households who qualify are not actually signed up on that. And ideally, if those folks are already going into people's homes, that they could let their populations know that we have a program running, so that maybe like, hey, if you have asthma, you can do this. Or if we're going out, we could be like, hey, they're doing free testing for children's lead levels in their blood, you know, that kind of thing. So I tried to capture everyone's comments, but just kept not unmuting myself. So if you made comments on this, please email them to me right after this meeting or even right now, so that I can incorporate them into the board report. It'd be helpful. With that, I'm really, really excited to see just how far this proposal has evolved, and just want to recognize staff's commitment and dedication and follow through, and like how much public comment and stakeholder input has really shaped and changed this proposal. I look forward to voting on supporting it, but I need a motion to do that.
Move to support staff's recommendation for this program.
Moved by member Pacheco. Is there a second?
I'd like to second that.
Member Souza seconds. Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, we could go for a roll call vote.
Great, thank you. Member Landry.
Repeat.
This is the vote to support staff recommendation.
That is correct. Moved by member Pacheco, seconded by member Souza.
Have your vote, please.
I'm having a hard time hearing you. I'm so sorry.
Maybe. We'll come back to member Landry. Member
Yes.
Oh, yes. Great, thank you.
Yes.
Member Hu.
Yes.
Member Liu. Member Swiminathan. Member Lakshman.
Yes.
Member Tari. Member Checa.
Yes.
Member Susan.
Yes.
Member Carr.
Yes.
Member Hernandez.
Yes.
Member Lutz.
Yes.
Chair Eldred.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Yay. It feels like a really long way to have come, y'all. A really long way. Excellent. Thank you for sticking around for that. With that, we will move on to item 7, which is CAC member and staff announcements, including requests to place items on future CAC agendas. Again, thank you, Adrian, for your incredible tracking of all of these requests. I feel like we're actually getting to them. Member Souza, is your hand still raised? Or you have a new one? Nope. All right, member Lutz.
Yeah, for future requests for items on the agenda, there's been lots of discussion on clarifying the cleanliness of EBC's electricity. And I don't think we've had an opportunity. We've had an opportunity to sort of hear Tom Kelly and staff go back and forth about how they're not answering each other's questions. It seems like we should invite them to do it in detail as a presentation so we can understand why they each think the other one has it totally wrong. So that's one request. And seeing how long it takes, I've been slowly talking to the city sustainability offices on how to improve EBCE's provisions and interactions with city staff. And at some point, I'd like to get a chance to present what I've found.
Absolutely. And we're looking at, that is on the list. And both of those requests have been made. And we are hoping to agendize the second one with the seating of the new board, so that we can take that information and also bring it to the new board to be able to say, hey, these are things that areas where we think the CAC and cities can work together.
Okay.
And
when would that be, just so I can be ready for it?
I think it'll be sometime in spring, and I'm not sure. We're still waiting on hearing back about when the new CAC members, when they're going to do that. So we're just waiting to hear back on some stuff. But yes, noted, and both of those agenda item requests are noted, and thank you.
Can you is there a public list of items that are to be agendized and a list of priorities on those? So we can see where we are on that?
Not yet. I do want to say that Adrian keeps excellent notes, and then we try and match the agenda items with things that are coming up on the board's agenda so that they're timely, right? And we do agendize Tom Kelly's issues every time something comes up with the board. And
but this body has a specific mandate. And so, and I really encourage discussions to happen, and they're there, but we agendize them as they are ripe with the what's happening with the board.
Okay.
Thank you. Member Landry?
Yes, thank you. I know this is, I read it in the last minutes, but I would like to have a status update on the in-house call center, especially if there'll be any, you know, pending budget requests for the coming year. Thank you.
Yes. Did I read you staff's response in the last meeting? I think I did. I can forward that to you again.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
And for sure, we will be continuing to pursue this item as we move forward. For sure. All right, are there any other announcements? All right, with that, we will be adjourning this meeting to Monday, December 19th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Again, we will have the opportunity to either participate in the Oakland office or participate via Zoom. Enjoy your fall, and we'll see you after the holidays.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you.